Here we go.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is
not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Did you think no one was watching?
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
your mission.
Suppose we go where no man has gone before. To reclaim the American dream.
To be given the rights of human beings. To be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities. By any means necessary.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
You certainly come to the right place. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Tuesday, September 15, 2015. I want to thank you for joining us this morning. You could have been anywhere in the world today, but you decided to spend some time with us. And for that, I am greatly appreciative. So let's just jump right into the news. Several things have happened since I last checked the news. You know, I don't watch the news on television. So sometimes I may be half a day late, particularly with Kim Davis going back to work on yesterday. Today is her second day back to work. And I want to discuss her speech and her different positions with regard to issuing and not issuing, and her blessings and her signature and all those types of things. And I'll deal with that in the next segment, probably. I definitely want to discuss Bernie Sanders at Liberty University. That was something to watch, man. Bernie Sanders went into the belly of the beast. Yeah. I mean, if you want to talk about the belly, if you want to talk about conservative, evangelical, Republican, moral majority, the people who handed Ronald Reagan his victory in the 1980s, it is Liberty University. The legacy of that is Liberty University and Jerry Falwell. And so Bernie Sanders went there and unashamedly just represented everything that he stands for. And they had some interesting exchanges in regard to, particularly, I want to highlight the conversation with regard to racism, and then the conversation they had with regard to abortion. And speaking of abortion, of course, Ben Carson, the only black presidential candidate in either party right now, went on TV One with Roland Martin, and he discussed Black Lives Matter, and he used the abortion issue as a way to deflect. So I have a clip of that, and I want to bring that into the conversation. Elizabeth Warren is back on the scene. Actually, she was on the scene over the weekend, and she's discussing Ted Cruz's attack on Planned Parenthood. So abortion, there's an abortion trifecta this morning. We have Ben Carson talking about it, Bernie Sanders talking about it, and Elizabeth Warren talking about it. So of course we have to talk about it. And then the last but not least, Tucker Carlson and Fox News are really losing their minds over the fact that DeRay McKesson is going to be a guest lecturer at Harvard University. I'm not Harvard, but Yale University this fall. So I want to discuss that, and I want to discuss their methodology and their deflection and their distortion of the truth, as well as just, I'll play the clip for you. I have a clip from Fox News that I want to play, and it will demonstrate everything that I'm trying to convey so much better than words. Their words are just, well, it is what it is. All right, so folks, let's get started on this Tuesday morning. It is a beautiful day outside, so I'm looking forward to getting out, and I'm going to do my ritual after the show before I go to work, which is going walking a couple miles and all that good stuff. I don't have my glasses this morning, so I don't know if so forgive me if I stumble over some things. Anyway, enough filibustering. Let's jump right into it with Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, you know, I watched some speeches of Bernie Sanders before, but I think Bernie Sanders is getting even stronger. And let me show you why. So the first thing I want to jump on is his conversation at Liberty University about race. They asked him, how would he bring an end to the racial animosity and the racial tensions in America? And this was Bernie Sanders' reply. If I can get this to play for you. Here we go.
But to answer your question, I think what we have got to do is, when we see instances of racism, when we hear political leaders appealing to the worst elements of us, by making racist attacks against people from another country or people whose color may be different than most of us. We have got to stand up and say, in America, you're not going to do that. Racism is unacceptable.
Yes, sir. We couldn't agree with you more on that thought. But just we would say, I think I speak for many of our students, that it's not so much a skin issue as much as it is a sin issue. That we can change the behavior. We could change. That we could change the. We could change the behavior of police. We could put cameras on them all day long, but behavior modification can only stop so short as identity change. And so I think we want what you want, but.
Well, let me just say this.
Well, I think where you're going to find commonality is at Liberty University, we're not interested in making sure people of color are invited to sit in the bus or even sit at the restaurant table. We want to see them own the bus and own the restaurant. So we're with you.
Okay, so there's a little bad edit in there, but you know, it was an early morning. So let me point out a couple of things here. First of all, Bernie Sanders, I have to applaud him for fearlessly going into the belly of the beast and not caring one bit. He stood his ground on every single issue. He did not equivocate. He did not back down. And he took it directly to Liberty. Now, I played the clip the way I did because I wanted you to see two things. Bernie had some supporters there, some people who, bless their hearts, they're progressives at Liberty University. It must be a difficult 4 years. It's probably just as difficult for them to survive those 4 years as conservatives think it is difficult for them to survive these last 4 years of President Obama. But I digress. You hear a very vocal and energetic response to Bernie Sanders. But then when this host, and I couldn't find his name, I'm sure if I looked a little hard, I could have found it. But when he positioned, and as you can see, I have one of my kids' toys in my hands. All right, throwing that away. When he positioned that answer or his rebuttal to Bernie Sanders' answer, and he said, we don't believe that it's a skin problem. We believe that it's a sin problem. You got a chance to hear what that auditorium, that convocation really sounds like when they support something you say, right? Something you said. And the auditorium erupted and with some people giving a standing ovation to the host, saying that it's not a sin problem. It's not a skin problem. It's a sin problem. Now, Bernie Sanders, the part I cut out and skipped over is something that Bernie Sanders said, which I'll say it for him. He essentially said, while it may be impossible to change character, everything that happened in the 60s, everything that happened in the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, everything that was accomplished here in the United States with regards to race relations came on the back of action. It came on the back of legislation. It came on the backs of people like Dr. King, and it came on the back of millions of people, he said, that were actively engaged in rectifying the problems of racism in America. Now, to that end, this guy, this host who represents Liberty University, he says that this is not a skin problem. This is a sin problem. And I'll talk about that as well as his next rebuttal, which was, well, we don't want people of color to just to not sit at the back of the bus. We want them to own the bus. All right. Both of those are just merely platitudes. These are conservative platitudes that really don't mean much in the world of racism in America. First of all, the excuse of it's not a skin problem, it's a sin problem. That's just a nice catchphrase that really means absolutely nothing in terms of what we will get done. It is another excuse of saying, let's wait on God to fix the problem, right? Let's wait on God to fix the problem, and let's not try to use legislation to fix the problem, because God can fix the problem. And so long as you can always wait on God to fix a problem, then you have abdicated your responsibility to make any type of social change to make your society better, because why should you do anything to make society better when you can wait on God to make society better? This is conservative Christianity Logic 101, especially those who don't want to see action. So what they do is they give you this nice sounding catchphrase for people who are religious to applaud to and cheer to and to hold on to, and that effectively neutralizes them from doing anything, and it absolves them of any responsibility that they have to the real problem of racism in America. I feel good this morning. I think I'm gonna tear these people a new one. So here's the thing: they have a responsibility to the racism that remains in America. They may not be responsible for slavery, right? We're not even going to argue about laying the feet of Jim Crow at their feet, but the residuals of slavery and Jim Crow and systemic oppression and racism in America is laid at the feet of every single American. Every American that benefits from America and benefits from white privilege and from the vestiges of slavery. And it is their responsibility to actually address the systemic problems. So if you make them, if you absolve them of it and say now that this is no longer your responsibility, that this is God's responsibility, then all of a sudden they can wash their hands of it and walk away and say, well, that's something that God has to fix. Okay. While you're waiting on God to fix something, then the rest of the world, the rest of America is actually doing something to fix the problem. But you don't want people to actually fix the problem. And that's the entire point of these platitudes. The entire point of deflecting and saying that, and I've heard this so many times, that's why I have to address it. A lot of Christians, a lot of evangelical Christians, they don't want you to be a social justice Christian. They don't want you to be the type of person who's going to fight against oppression and fight against inequality and fight against racism. They want you to be the type of Christian that says, no, gotta fix it, and then just walk away. Because that neutralizes all of your efforts, that neutralizes any impetus inside of you to actually fix the problems that are man-made. Here's the key thing. God did not create white supremacy. Whether you believe in God or not, he did not create, or he, she, it, whatever you regard God as, did not create white supremacy and racism. White supremacy and racism was a tool. And it was a very effective tool that has lasted hundreds of years in America. So while you're waiting on God to fix a problem that you created and that your ancestors created and that you benefit from, you could be rectifying the problem with actual legislation and actual policies that would change the paradigm. And I can't believe I'm about to quote Hillary Clinton, but I'm going to quote Hillary Clinton. We're not so much concerned about changing hearts. We're concerned about affecting policy that can change the situation. So while you're worried about people's hearts, and here's another thing, that sin, and I'm just going to go on a tangent here, that sin versus skin paradigm, are they actually suggesting that all of these white police officers and some black police officers, quite frankly, who are being the tool of white supremacy, who are killing so many unarmed black people, are they really suggesting that all of those white people are just, they have a problem with sin, that they're sinners? Or are they nicely wrapping this catchphrase in to say that, no, it's a holistic sin problem. The black people shouldn't have been sinning and the white people shouldn't. You see how twisted and manipulative this situation can become? Do you see how easy it is to get people to absolutely stand still and do nothing? That is the ultimate goal. That is the ultimate plan, is to get people to do nothing with regard to anything that will fix. And here it is. I'm going to play the next clip where he addresses abortion. Anything to fix the problems that you claim to be concerned about, because this goes over to abortion. I want to play this part about, if you want to see a real applause at Liberty University, let me play this clip on abortion, the question they asked him with regard to pro-life, and just listen to the crowd.
But to answer your question, I think what we have got to do is when we see instances of racism.
Okay, that's the wrong clip. Let's try this next clip. Bernie at Liberty on abortion and pro-life and pro-choice. Here we go.
but here's the question. A majority of Christians would agree with you, but would also go further and say that children in the womb need our protection even more. How do you reconcile?
That's an applause. And look at the standing ovations.
This is an area where we disagree. I do understand and I do believe that it is improper for the United States government or state government to tell every woman in this country the very painful and difficult choice that she has to make on that issue. And I honestly don't want to be too provocative here, but very often conservatives say, get the government out of my life. I don't want the government telling me what to do. But on this very sensitive issue, of which this nation is divided, a lot of people agree with you, a lot of people agree with me. But my view is, I respect absolutely a family that says, no, we are not going to have an abortion. I understand that. I respect that. But I would hope that other people respect the very painful and difficult choice that many women feel they have to make and don't want the government telling them what they have to do. Now, I want to tell you what was in the Republican budget that passed a number of months ago. Check it out. You're thinking I'm not telling you the truth. When you talk about issues of children, understand Republican budget threw 27 million people off of health care, including many children. At a time when many families cannot afford to send their kids to college. And I am running on a program, by the way, that says every public college and university in America should be tuition free. But at a time when families cannot afford to send their kids to college, Republican budget cut $90 billion in Pell Grants over a 10-year period. At a time when children in America are going hungry, Republican budget cut billions of dollars in nutrition programs, including money for the WIC program, which goes to low-income pregnant women and their babies. And to add insult to injury, in that budget, the Republicans provided over $250 billion over a 10-year period in tax breaks to the top 0.2%. I don't think that is a moral budget.
I don't think that's a moral budget either, Bernie Sanders. This was great stuff by Bernie on yesterday. And I love how he attacked this. There is this vein in the pro-life movement, in conservative evangelicalism, in all of these religious and morally, ostensibly moral organizations that really attempts to neutralize you from doing anything that will actually give you positive gains in the direction of what you're talking about. Case in point, at the very end of that clip, Bernie Sanders went down a litany of programs that were gutted by the Republican budget that they passed several months ago. I did an entire show about it. And I asked the question, why would any Christian vote Republican when you look at this budget and you see how immoral the budget is? Dr. King said that budgets are moral instruments. And so if you look at that budget and you realize that they are gutting every single program that would roll back the need and the demand for abortions, which would reduce the number of abortions in America, but they gut those programs, they really are not interested in seeing a reduction in abortions. They really are just interested in having an absolutist position of you can't have the choice to decide for yourself. And Bernie Sanders tackled that head on inside of the belly of the beast of conservative evangelical Christianity. And he took it to them. And so here it ties right back into this mindset that comes from Christian evangelicals of let's eat one or two things. Let's just completely wait on God to fix the problem, especially when it's something that we don't want to have any responsibility in fixing. Or let's completely take away all of a person's rights to do something that we disagree with. Look at those two complete extremes. One is let's not get involved. And the other one is let's use the power of the government to run in and control the lives and dictate the lives of an entire half of America. You cannot, well, I was going to say that you cannot exist in those two extremes, but apparently there's this cognitive dissonance inside of conservatives that actually makes sense to them, that on some issues that they should not get involved in whatsoever because God can fix it. But in other issues, God can't fix it. Let's use the government to fix it. And Bernie Sanders called out all of that at Liberty University. And I can't overstate how wonderful it was. How wonderful it was to actually hear someone go to that school and actually tell them things that they may not have wanted to hear. All right, so folks, we're going to take a quick break. When I come back, I want to keep dealing with the issue of pro-choice versus pro-life. Planned Parenthood, Elizabeth Warren and Ted Cruz are arming up for a battle on Planned Parenthood. And then also I want to bring Ben Carson into the fray because he nicely juxtaposes his positions with both issues of race and Planned Parenthood. So when we come back, you can join the conversation, 857-600-0518. This is a Tuesday episode of the Benjamin Dixon Show, and we will be back after we get some music to take us to break. We will be back, maybe, sort of. Let's see what's going on over here. Well, how about that? My commercial breaks do not want to play today. Maybe it's your guys' lucky day. Let's any day now. Let's try this one. Do you want to play? Let's go here. Do you want to play? This is good. That one wants to play. We'll be back after this break, and I figure out what the hell is going on over here.
Hey, if you're like me, you're probably hearing the news that the economy is getting better, right? But there's one problem. You still don't have a job. Get back into the game with Chance.com, the state-of-the-art online employment connection for the new generation. Get access to millions of jobs on Chance that are actually hiring now. Stop searching for outdated job postings. Log on to Chance.com. Create a profile, and then be found. Make the connection you need to get hired today. If you're serious about your career, you've got to check this out. Chance.com. Get that job. Make that chance with Chance.com. JANZZ.com.
The traditional light bulb, a groundbreaking invention in 1879. It's time we switch to longer-lasting Energy Star light bulbs. They're more efficient than the old bulbs, like a text message is more efficient than a carrier pigeon. And they cut down on our energy costs. Because in our own groundbreaking age, we deserve a light bulb that saves us some cash. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
You feel petrified. You're struggling with your mortgage payments, not knowing what to do. You do nothing. But if you do something, you're far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making Home Affordable is a free government program. Call 888-995-HOPE to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about your options. Call 888-995-HOPE or visit makinghomeaffordable.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Treasury, HUD, and the Ad Council.
It's 6:42 p.m. Time for Steve Plato and his son Dylan to do the dishes. They talk about everything from the yuckiness of girls to the awesomeness of his soccer team. Sometimes they don't talk at all. Then, hey, the dreaded splash fight. It's Dad o'clock, and it's the best time of the day because the smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Buckle up for the ride. Give us a call, 857-600-0518.
All right. No idea what happened with my last commercial break, but it's neither here nor there. We'll just keep going, especially with those loud pops. All right. So I want to jump right into the same conversation. It's this attitude towards certain issues where you should just not get involved. And then the complete opposite position where you feel like the government should come in and completely control another situation. And we see this hypocrisy in conservatism quite a bit. And I think it's also best demonstrated here by Ben Carson in an interview he did with Roland Martin on yesterday. And this has Ben Carson on TV One. And I want to play a clip of it for you.
Yes, Black Lives Matter, but I believe all Black Lives Matter. And I am very disappointed that the movement doesn't recognize that the carnage in the Black community coming about through institutions like Planned Parenthood and crime upon each other is very significant. And we need to be looking at the things that are keeping the Black community from accelerating, like rotten school systems and, tolerating the drugs that are in our neighborhood.
All right, let me stop right there because he's going to go into something else and I have to address him right there. Okay. So yes, Black Lives Matter, but all Black Lives Matter. And we're not looking at the carnage of Planned Parenthood. There's only one organization. There's only one person in history that conservatives will ever admit was racist. And I believe Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood. If I have the name wrong, just tweet me and correct me. But this is the only person that conservatives would ever concede was a racist because it plays directly into their attacks on Planned Parenthood. Notwithstanding the fact that Planned Parenthood, only 3% of what Planned Parenthood does is abortion or abortions, right? Notwithstanding that's besides the point, which means 97% of what they do has nothing to do with abortions, but providing healthcare services to people in underprivileged communities who before Obamacare and probably a lot after Obamacare do not have access to sufficient health care, to preventative care, to all sorts of things, to mammograms, to screenings, all these things that Planned Parenthood provide that there are plenty of experts out there who can speak to it better. They don't care one bit about those services. They are completely obsessed with the abortion services that Planned Parenthood provides. Now, because of that, they have a vested interest in destroying any and every aspect of Planned Parenthood. And so a part of that is this narrative that they try to convince Black people of, that Planned Parenthood was put in the Black community to destroy Black children, right? This is nothing more than another spin of propaganda by conservatism, because they do understand that Planned Parenthood is one of the biggest donors, biggest supporters of the Democratic Party. Now, they do not care, and I want to emphasize this, they do not care one bit about reducing abortions in America, because if they did, then they would not cut budgets that will affect programs which decrease the demand for the need for abortions in America. One of the I'll post the link in the description. It's not there yet, but I will post it. One of the biggest factors in the choice to have an abortion is poverty or the inability to afford a child. And it's not it's not the welfare queen or the young girl, promiscuous girl who is having abortions. If you look at the data, it shows that there are a lot of married couples who simply cannot afford an additional child who are now making that difficult choice. But when we talk about any of the programs that would, or any of the policies that would absolutely reduce the need for abortions in that particular demographic, because it would help alleviate poverty, it would increase and grow the middle class, anything that would actually affect the need and the demand for abortions, well, they're hands off. They don't care. You know, they don't care. They don't even discuss it. They don't even consider it. And that's the thing. That's how I know that they are not serious about it. Now, here's the other part. Here's another part. According to the Guttmacher Institute, and I'll have this link in the description as well. According to the Guttmacher Institute, 65% of all abortions are performed on Christians, people who identify themselves as Christians. I believe, and it's around 35% of Protestant, and then the remaining percentage is, or is it 45%? But it's a split between Protestant and Catholic, more Protestant than Catholic, but all of them who identify as Christians, 65%. And so, obviously, while they are out here hammering and pounding and trying to convince Black people and trying to convince everybody and trying to lecture Bernie Sanders about their positions on abortion and pro-life versus pro-choice, some of them need to just go back to their own churches and preach the sermon to their membership. Because obviously the sermons on abstinence have not worked when 65% of the people who are getting abortions right now are Christians. So to me, it's completely disingenuous when you're talking about abortions and you're talking about the tragedy of abortions. It's completely disingenuous when your elected officials and the people that you support are doing things that are going to exacerbate abortions. If you really meant to bring an end to abortions, then there's two things that you can do that would actually fix and reduce it by a dramatic amount. Number one, you would get your own house in order in every church, and every person that's preaching. You need to address that in your church because abstinence is not working, obviously. So if you fix that, you fix 65% of the problem. Like, wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be wonderful to see a reduction in abortions by that much? But they're not interested in that. And then the other thing would be to actually implement programs to restore, not implement, just restore the programs that help working poor people so that they can actually afford an additional child. And I love what Bernie Sanders said about it. He said, if it's a matter of a person making the decision to keep a baby, then by all means, we support that. Right? We want that. But then likewise, the solution is not an authoritarian stroke in our government to control the bodies and the decisions of half of America. All right. I'm going to take a break here and take this phone call. Caller, what is your name, comment, and or question?
Oh, it's my name, John Maloney.
John.
I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback in the phone. Let me call you back. It's repeating my voice back to me.
Oh, well, you really just have to cut off your
Oh, okay, it stopped. I'm sorry. Yeah, so I was gonna say that's not the only person we'll admit was racist. I mean, Woodrow Wilson was a hardcore racist. He actually resegregated the federal government. It had been desegregated before he got to office. Bull Connor was a racist. George Wallace was a racist. Alan Guttmacher, who founded the Guttmacher Institute. He was a hardcore racist.
Now tell me something, John.
Carson, Planned Parenthood.
Tell me something, John.
Purpose of that was to,
Tell me something, John. What is the only connecting factor between all those people that you just identified, and then I'll show you
Democrats.
Exactly.
Yeah,
now, so according to conservatives, the only people historically who are racist are either Democrats or people who help support Planned Parenthood, people who oppose their political ideology, which is exactly what I'm getting ready to play. When I get to this clip on Tucker Carlson,
they were eugenics, though. They were eugenicists. I don't know which Republican racists would try to destroy, actually go out and reduce the number of the Black population.
First of all, let's.
Yeah, you don't have a name, do you? So that's why we mention it, because it's the worst. You know what I mean? When you're trying to stop a population, and actually reduce it.
There have been, first of all, hang on.
Hardcore racism.
Let's look at. I mean, and again, I appreciate your call, but let's have a conversation back and forth. If you're talking about actual atrocities against one race, are you really going to start the conversation with abortion versus the conversation that should have started a long time ago. See, what happens in conservative circles is that you guys want to completely wash your hands of any responsibility to all of the problems that we see in the Black community and only want to focus on the racism. Hang on. Let me finish my thought.
Republicans don't have any power.
Hang on. We're going to let me finish my thought and then you can have the floor. Yeah, you want to complete, and this is exactly what we saw at Liberty University. We just wash our hands of, well, racism, let God handle that. But then abortion, oh yeah, Margaret Sanger, she was a eugenist, she was a racist, she just wanted to kill every Black person. So which is it? Is it that God is going to fix your race problem? You can't. What you're doing is cherry picking the issues that you think should be important and completely ignoring all of the historical baggage that is currently. We're not talking about just slavery and the genocide and the attempted genocide that occurred in the slave trade. But we're also talking about the effects that linger today, which actually contribute to the demand for abortions. When you talk about abortions, the number one cause is poverty. Go for it.
Okay. So, all right. I admit that the Democratic Party had slavery, they had Jim Crow, and they're doing a terrible job in the schools right now. That they're
Again, go ahead. I'll let you. I'm going to give you about 15 seconds to run with your propaganda, and then I'm going to cut in.
Liberal does not care about Black kids, right? They will stick up for the teachers union and watch 1 million of those kids go without an education. That's how much they care. All right, let's be honest. So there's a bunch of legacies that are harming the Black community, but Republicans weren't responsible for them, right? They don't. You can't name a Republican who harmed the Black community anywhere near that these Democrats have. You're like,
that's because,
you guys keep harping on the teachers union. You keep covering Woodrow Wilson.
Okay,
slavery, all these.
I've given you enough time for your propaganda.
Republicans fought them.
I've given you enough time for your propaganda. And we can dissect this from the beginning, but I'm not going to give you my entire show. You can call back afterwards, like I said yesterday, and then we can debate from the beginning. But the reason you say I can't name, first of all, I can name quite a few Republicans who actually have been detrimental to the Black community by leaps and bounds. But what you're doing, I'm not going to run after that chase man. What you're doing is that straw man, rather. What you're doing is trying to look at a snapshot. Hang on. You're trying to look at a snapshot and say, here's a city that's run by Democrats. So it must be something that Democrats are harming Black people. Here's a city with no regard.
Can you name a Democratic city where Black people are getting average school and security service?
Your entire premise is wrong. Your entire premise, your starting point is wrong. So there's no reason for me to even discuss that question with you.
Uniondale, New York had better than average school security services run by Republicans.
Your entire premise is wrong. You're trying to lay the economic condition of a city as if that city is capable of creating its own economy outside of the influence of the national economy and outside the influence of the global economy. There is not a city in the United States of America that is not directly impacted by the national economy and the entire global economy. So if you're not going to discuss the effects of neoliberalism in general, then we're not going to discuss the effects that it has on a city.
Well, hold on, wait a second, because you make it too big now.
No. It is big. Hang on.
States that have average school and security services, more than half.
Big. But it is. Hold on. You ran after a chase man, straw man. You ran after a straw man, and I'm going to tell you why it was completely wrong.
You're going to get like some welfare program or some other nonsense that doesn't help you.
You ran after a straw man, and here is why you're completely wrong.
John,
a program. John, right? John is your name. John.
You know what I mean?
John. I'm going to put you on mute for a second because you don't want to listen. You put up this straw man about the impact of two things. You put the impact of the eugenics through history, right? And then you say a democratic city. So now your entire mindset.
Planned Parenthood is a eugenics. It started out with Alan Guttmacher, the guy you quoted, or whose institutes you quoted. He was a eugenicist. That's why I mentioned it.
I'm not running after that because it's, first of all, it's partially. I'm not going to say you have 100% revisionist history, but you have a very strong revisionist history in there, and we can discuss that later. But I'm going to attack it exactly where you wanted to lay it. You wanted to lay it on to say that the problems that we've seen through history was because of the Democratic Party. Now, first of all, like I said, we can go back to the very beginning of this, and then I'm going to go off and finish my show. Number one, It's never been about a political party as much as it has been about a political ideology. The South and the North were not so much about Democrats versus Republicans. They were always about people who wanted to maintain the status quo versus people who wanted to change the status quo. Status quo was slavery. The South benefited overwhelmingly from slavery. The North benefited as well, but the South carried it. The South was, up until 1964, completely controlled by the Democratic Party. So all of your history that you're espousing is accurate in terms of a political party, but not accurate whatsoever with regard to a political ideology, because the people who supported all of the segregation, racism, all of them have now shifted. In 1964, when the Civil Rights Act was passed, you saw a dynamic shift in the entire electorate of the South, where it turned from being completely blue, run by Democrats, to being completely red, run by Republicans. Now, you answer me this.
Over the course of 40 years, because Martin Luther King did his job. You know, none of those Democrats switched after the 1964 Civil Rights Act.
They did switch. They
lost their office. You know, Strom Thurmond quit. That was the only one. The entire Florida state legislature, Georgia state legislature, all Democrat. All
did the South
carry?
Who carried the South? Who has carried the South post 1964? Who has carried the South? Overwhelmingly,
the Democrats until the late 70s.
The overwhelming, no. Look at the realignment. Look at the realignment election of 1964. I want you to go to Wiki. We're not going to argue over each other because I have to do a show. Look at the realignment election of 1964, and you will see that there was an immediate shift from the Republican Party running, the Democratic Party running the South, to the Republican Party running the South. And it has been that way since. If you want to lay racism at the feet of the Democratic Party, I will give you this bone. The Democratic Party was one of the founding impetuses behind the Ku Klux Klan. But you tell me something right now. Where do you think the Klan, did you think the Klan voted for in 2008 and 2012? Do you think they actually voted with the Black Democrat? So all of this obfuscation that you're trying to bring to the show, I appreciate the call, but if we're just going to talk over each other, there's no reason to have the call. But what you're trying to say is you're trying to lay all of everything at the feet of a political party, when in actuality, it is laid at the feet of a political ideology. And that ideology is conservatism. They have always wanted to control and maintain the status quo, as Bill O'Reilly said, as being run by white Christian men. And I'm pulling up his quote. He said it himself. America is run by white Christian men.
America is run by white Christian men.
And so that's what he wants. That represents conservatism in a nutshell, the desire to maintain that. And so throughout history, you can look at that mindset. Anyone who wanted to incorporate women, anyone who wanted to incorporate minorities, anyone who wanted to incorporate non-Christians, they have been at the core of what you say, eugenics, of trying to wipe out an entire race. That mindset has always been a conservative mindset to maintain the power structure and keep it safe in the hands of white Christian men. Now, we can run down the list of all the Democrats in history. Matter of fact, Kim Davis is a Democrat. How about that? I'm going to help your argument out. Kim Davis is a Democrat, but you mean to tell me that you believe that Kim Davis is a progressive because she has a D by her name? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Kim Davis is a conservative in the most traditional sense. And that is exactly what the problem is and has been. People who are terrified of moving beyond the comfort of the status quo, where America was controlled by white Christian men. Now, next time you want to call John, you can call after the show so that I don't have to run off on a tangent with you. I'm not going to run off a tangent with you every single day, but I'll be glad to debate you in earnest, in full. We can start at the beginning and go to the end, but we're going to have to do that after the show. Back to the show. Ben Carson. Ben Carson plays to this exact paradigm that, and this is, I'm glad you called in, John, because you play directly into Ben Carson, and Ben Carson plays directly into Tucker Carlson with regard to this conservative attitude towards not only black issues, but towards progressive issues in general. And here Ben Carson is going to talk a little bit more, and I'll let him speak for himself.
What I'm saying is I want them to be successful, and they're going to be a lot more successful if they don't alienate a big part of the community.
Who are they alienating in the community?
They're alienating a lot of people who are not black, but just because what they're hearing is that we're the only ones who are important and nobody else is important.
Who's that?
All right. I want to stop there. This is the Ben Carson. This is the black conservative. This is conservatism in general, the mindset of anyone who is going to challenge the status quo. Black Lives Matter is challenging the status quo. Code Pink challenges the status quo. The LGBT movement challenges the status quo. Anyone who does that is instantly feared and instantly castigated and derided because they are going to what? Alienate people who are not black, or people who are not gay, or people who are not women. This is the mindset. And they have no qualm whatsoever with creating a revisionist history, which ignores dynamic shifts through history completely. It's easy to say that black people, that Democrats were racist. Hell, there's some Democrats that are racist now. That's easy. It's easy to say that abortion is an atrocity and is killing millions of people in the black community and millions of babies across America, but then pay absolutely no attention to policies that will reduce the need for abortions. So this is the mindset. It's a sleight of hand. It's a now you see it, now you don't. We're concerned, but we're not going to do anything to actually remedy the situation short of becoming an authoritarian regime which wants to completely revoke someone's access. That is their only solution outside of, well, God will fix it. That is their entire mindset, and that's their entire mentality. And we don't have time for that. There's too much to be done. And there's too much to be done on my show to be wasting time with callers who just want to yell over us. So by all means, I love to debate, but we're not just going to yell over each other. Folks, I'm going to take one more break. And when I come back, we're going to deal with Tucker Carlson and Fox News and DeRay McKesson. We'll be back after this brief break. If I can get my commercials to play today, that would be a wonderful thing. Let's see about this one. Is this one going to work for us? I think somebody has like everything plays except for my commercials. It's a beautiful thing. I don't like commercials any more than you guys do, but I've got that one going. All right, folks, we'll be back after this. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show.
When you're ready to lose weight, why count, track, and worry over every meal? Jenny Craig makes it simple. Just walk into a neighborhood Jenny Craig center or give us a call. You'll meet your dedicated personal consultant who helps you reach your goals. Together, you'll pick out delicious Jenny Craig foods that you'll love and design a menu that fits your life. And the best part is that you can get started losing weight right away. Don't wait any longer to take advantage of our best offer ever. Call 1-800-JENNY20 or visit jennycraig.com.
This is the sound of salmonella gyrating on your undercooked chicken. And it looks like Mom might be taking it out a little early. Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. So use a thermometer to cook each type of meat to the right temperature. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
On the next episode of Recipes for Disaster.
I'm making beef sliders for my friend Sandy. Nana taught me to always pull meat off the grill early so it's extra juicy.
Use a food thermometer to ensure ground beef is 160 degrees, or you could make people really sick. Sandy didn't think twice about the slider she ate until yoga class, when a nasty case of food poisoning turned her downward-facing dog into upward-moving lunch. Watch Recipes for Disaster at foodsafety.gov and learn the steps Maria unwittingly leaves out. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
When I grow up, I want to be a new pair of blue jeans.
When I grow up, I want to be a kid's first computer.
Warm fleece on a cool day. I want to be a bike that races around the country.
I want to be a bench on a forest trail.
When I grow up, I don't want to be a piece of garbage. And if you recycle me, I won't be.
Give your garbage another life. Recycle. Learn how at iwanttoberecycled.org. Brought to you by Keep America Beautiful and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
All right, folks. All right, back to, let's start this video here. Let's get back on track. And you can join the conversation, so long as you stay on track. 857-600-0518. We're not just going to chase a constant straw man. That's its own type of trolling. John, I recognize that. So Tucker Carlson, let me set this up really quick. DeRay McKesson, everybody, if you're involved at all with anything about Black Lives Matter, even if you just observe, you know, DeRay McKesson is one of the most outspoken voices for Black Lives Matter. He has been given an opportunity to be a guest lecturer at Yale University for a weekend lecture concerning transformative leadership. And anyone who has studied anything about transformative leadership, it is exactly fit for a person like DeRay, because it discusses not only a person who brings a new type of leadership that transforms the current paradigm that we're living under, but it's also someone who is transformative in themselves, in the sense that they don't come from traditional roots, or they don't come from a traditional. And that's exactly what DeRay McKesson is. He's a guy who went on the scene of Ferguson and reported what he was seeing via his Twitter profile, and went from 1,000 followers to, I think he's up to like 170,000, some ridiculous number now. And he not only is a Twitter thought leader and all those types of things, but he's actually a very well-spoken and outspoken person on police brutality in the United States of America. But you would think that in spite of the fact that he is a new type of leader who comes from a different type of background and has the same level of influence on a national level as many PhDs, you would think that DeRay was just some side of the road junkie that Yale University was bringing in to give a lecture because of how conservatives are responding to it. And I want you to understand something very, very clearly, and I can't reiterate this enough. It is about conservatism. And wherever you find it, whether you find it in a liberal city or you find it in the Democratic Party, it has always been about people who fear change. And you can see this hidden in this video. Or at least they tried to hide it until you actually research the person that they brought on. They brought on this sophomore from Yale to speak about DeRay McKesson coming. So I'm going to play this clip and we'll discuss.
I guess what bothers me about this is not that he doesn't share my politics. Most people don't. He's liberal. Yale is liberal, of course. Not an impressive guy. Just kind of a race hustler. What are his qualifications to teach at Yale, which you think of as kind of a big deal place, right?
Yeah, essentially, as far as I can tell from his LinkedIn profile and research I've done on him, he taught middle school math for a couple years, and he's been a human resource manager. But we have Nobel laureates teaching at Yale, and he just really doesn't meet the criteria for a Yale professor.
Yeah, I would think. So you're paying an awful lot of money to go to Yale. I mean, it's over 50 grand a year. Is this kind of what you expected when you showed up to be taught by people like this?
Absolutely not. I pay over $60,000 a year. The Divinity School is over $25,000 a year. And now we're seeing our money go to bringing professional protesters to campus instead of real professors.
I guess.
Arissa, oh, perfect. I perfectly timed that. Arissa Damron. Arissa Damron. And I want you to go to look at her Twitter profile and you'll see why. So she comes on Fox News as a student from Yale University, right? But what they don't emphasize, and first of all, Tucker Carlson sets it up saying that, you know, it's not that I don't like him because of his politics. Well, no, that's the exact reason you don't like him. The exact reason Fox News hates and conservatives hate DeRay McKesson is because they hate anyone who is going to be bold enough to speak out against the status quo. And I lump it all underneath the status quo because it is the perfect, it encapsulates
what they want to maintain and what they fear change of. And so it's not that they're just going to oppose Black Lives Matter and DeRay McKesson. They are going to oppose anyone and everyone who would dare challenge the system the way we find it today. And so they bring on Arissa Damron to speak as a sophomore from Yale University, and she begins to speak in such a condescending tone with such elitism that conservatives ostensibly hate, right? But she talks about, well, I pay $60,000 a year, and the divinity school, well, they pay the penance of $25,000 a year, and we have Nobel laureates, and we don't need professional protesters. We don't need people like this at our school. I think Tucker Carson actually said those words, people like this. And so it's playing into classism, and you could just leave it there if you didn't actually do some research on this girl, on this woman, a young woman, and find out that she's actually an activist for a conservative women's group at Yale University, and she's an activist in conservatism in general. And so it is exactly about the fact that DeRay does not conform to your political ideology, Tucker Carlson. It is exactly the fact that I don't even buy into the classism so much, but it's just disgusting to see the fact that because he did not attend an Ivy League university, that all of a sudden a person who doesn't go to an Ivy League does not have something substantive to contribute to a conversation, when in fact DeRay is probably one of the most prolific speakers on his issue. Right? Never mind all of the people out in America who may never have attended an Ivy League institution, who have something substantive to say on the issue on which they are an expert. But the casual classist condescension and dismissal of anyone who did not come from Yale University, and anyone who because her professors have Nobel laureates. I get congratulations, right? But that does not that does not negate the contribution of everyone else in America who would never attend an Ivy League school. But it's not so much, they're using that nuance. And that's the slick thing about it. They can contort this argument to be a classist argument so that they can still attack DeRay and attack anyone who challenges anyone who challenges the status quo. Right. So they would rather use a classist argument because they understand this is something that their crowd would come along. Of course, DeRay shouldn't be teaching at Yale. He's only taught middle school math. He's only been a human resource manager. Why are they bringing him in? And it just speaks volumes to the length that conservatives will go to sustain the status quo and to suppress anyone who is a threat to that. And so they'll play the classist card, but then in the same exact channel, network, and conversation, they will dismiss President Obama as being an intellectual elite because he was the president of the Harvard Law Review, or because he speaks in a professorial tone, right? So just the hypocrisy, which is nothing new. But the idea that they are opposing him because he's quote unquote unqualified is just disingenuous, because at its core, it is opposition. It is purely an opposition to his political positions. All right, caller, what is your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, how you doing there, Ben? This is Patrick. Hey, I just want to point out to you, this is a powerful point you made, but I just want to say something about school. Just because you pay $60,000 to go to a school, you don't have to take the class, do you?
No, not at all.
So what difference do it make? They can bring anybody they want to at the school. If you don't want to go, just don't go. That's the point that kills me about some of the stuff that they're doing. It isn't like Yale is forcing her to go to class.
Exactly.
No, this is an opportunity for somebody who might be interested in this issue and in his take on this issue to come and to learn and to get it firsthand, because that's what university is supposed to be about.
Exactly.
Catch it firsthand and apply some of it, what you can, to your life, and it may help you with your positioning as you go forward in your life. These folks crazy. Thank you for going overtime today, Ben.
No problem. I'm going overtime because I started a few minutes late, but that's absolutely true. So it's not even about the fact that she has to be subjected to this class, right, Patrick? That's exactly the case. She does not have to be subjected to this class, but you would be amazed at the number of people who are absolutely losing their mind, and they have the need to try to find a valid position to oppose him on. And so they have reduced themselves to taking the position of elitist and classist so that they can oppose him and have a valid reason to oppose him, because they don't want to dare say that they only oppose him because of his politics. Because if they say that, then they will directly concede to the fact that the point that I've been making this entire show. Conservatism is completely opposed to any radical, revolutionary, or simple movement that challenges the status quo. They want you to stay in your place. And they want to control your population. They want to control your choices. So for everyone, for John, let me go back to John, who wants to address this, the Democrats in history. Listen, it's never been about, I don't care about a D or an R. It's about the mindset and the political ideology, the political ideology of control, of keeping people in their place, controlling their populations so that they do not become a threat to the status quo power and economic and political structure of the United States of America. And so with this thing with DeRay McKesson, it's not about the fact that he did not come from a Ivy League institution. It's about the fact that he is one of the most outspoken people challenging the status quo power system. And so long as you have people out there challenging the status quo of the power structure of America, you will always have conservatives who want to conserve that status quo, falling over themselves, contradicting themselves, undermining their own policies, undermining their own positions, undermining everything that they stand for, simply to oppose anyone who's a threat to their power structure. And you can take that to the bank. Look throughout history, all throughout history, it has always been about those people who are afraid of change. All right, folks. That's it for today. I'll see you tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show.
And until that moment comes, when we, the Americans, are able to accept the fact that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other, that I am not a ward of America. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment.
And we are brothers. It's not a question of Jews or Christians or Muslims. We're all in the same boat.
For which we need each other.
Love is a condition so powerful. It may be that which holds the stars in the firmament.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
I come to you today to say that we can build a newer and better nation. I say we can do so, that we must do so, and that we will do so.
You've tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.